Hello. Some of you might recognize me as Mel Kiper Jr., former NFL analyst for the Four Letter Network. It seems that the Four Letter Network has had a change in philosophy. Apparently, they are moving in a different direction. Their new demographic includes young girls that buy Justin Bieber records. This is evidenced by the fact that they have taken me out of the equation and have put that douche of a juvenile, Todd McRookie, in as the full-time NFL analyst. But as luck would have it, I have moved on. A good friend of mine, Mr. Sean Cooper, runs the Star Vegas Tout Service, and he asked me if I would come aboard and do some on-screen analysis for the League of Todd. So here I am. Moving on. I no longer have to work with that fat tubalard of worthless talent, Chris Berman. He could go rumbling, bumbling, stumbling back. Whatever. But I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter. I'm here. I'm moving on. We've got new things to do here at the Star Vegas Tout Service. So this section is going to be termed Star Kiper Tout Service Extraordinaire. So, before I go any further, I just want to say I'm happy to be here. Not bitter. Not bitter. We're just moving on, moving forward. And please excuse me. I'm rocking the glasses. I had a little bit of a down period when the Four Letter Network cut me loose. Had a little bit of alcohol. A little binge drinking going on there. So I'm still recovering. But I'm here. I'm focused. And we're ready to talk some football. All right? So without further ado, let's get into the games. First game up, Ben Bad Boys at Stinkies. Ben's getting 6 points in this one. All right? Everybody knows I love Aaron Rodgers. Talented guy, took on a great defense last week in San Francisco, almost won the ball game. He's going to do some great things this week, as we saw Philadelphia just shred Washington. Michael Vick isn't half the quarterback Aaron Rodgers is, okay? He's going to have a nice day. Stephen Ridley, I can't trust him. Bill Belichick doesn't trust him. Nobody trusts him. He puts the ball on the floor. It's just not going to work out for him. They're looking in other areas. Stephen Ridley might end up riding the bench by the time the first period's over, okay? So then you got Joik Bell. He's just a touchdown vulture. That's all he is. Everybody knows that if Reggie Bush is healthy, he's the man in Detroit. He's going to get the carries. He's going to get all the fame and the glory. He's rocking his way to the end zone, on the ground, through the air. He's a multi-threat back. Joik Bell is just a piece of trash, okay? Now you get down a little bit further into the lineup for Ben. Julio Jones, former Alabama standout, got great hands, big prototype receiver, good stuff. Guy runs like the wind. Problem is that St. Louis secondary is a little bit better than people give them credit for. So I think that's sort of a low-scoring contest this week. Not putting up big stats for Julio Jones. Jared Cook, tight end. If you're going to play a tight end in the League of Todd, his name better be Jimmy Graham or Rob Gronkowski, or they ain't worth junk. All right? So Jared Cook ain't getting nothing done for Ben this week. Okay? You got Matt Bryant. Again, low-scoring affair. Not a whole lot going on in Atlanta, St. Louis. 49ers D should have an okay time, but we all know that Marshawn Lynch is going to run the heck out of the football, so not a lot of opportunities to sack Russell Wilson and create turnovers there. Jimmy Graham should have a stellar day against a horrible Buccaneer team. So that's another bright spot there for Bad Ben. Okay? When you look at the other side of the fence, you got Stinker. Okay? He's got the all-SEC backfield. Started by the forehead, Peyton Manning. 7 touchdown passes last week. What more do you want me to say? The guy's all world. This New York Giant game is going to be really high scoring. I wouldn't say 7 TDs, but I don't think 4 or 5's out of the equation. So expect big things from Manning this week, all right? Eddie Lacy, we saw last week that the Packers are a little bit more committed to the run than they used to be, okay? So we think they're going to run the football a little bit against Washington. We saw what LaShawn McCoy did to them. Good things could be in store for Eddie Lacy this week. Trent Richardson, little tougher matchup. Baltimore, temper your expectations for Trent Richardson, okay? It might not work out for him this week. And you got Andre Johnson. I mean, all he did was catch 13 balls in the Monday night affair against the Chargers, facing a pretty bad Tennessee secondary. I expect him to have a nice game. You got Wes Welker. Everybody knows he and Peyton have this bromance now. They're, throwing and catching and scoring touchdowns. Everything's happy in Denver. I like him to have a big game too. Matt Prater, again, you score that many points. I don't care if you kick 8 extra points. That's 8 points from your kicker. Life is good. And then you got the Ravens defense. Against Cleveland, Brandon Weeden kind of hit and miss. Opportunity for some turnovers there. Okay. Bottom line is, I really like Stinker to win this game and cover the 6-point spread. Okay. We're going to move on to our second game here. Kitty at Star. Kitty's getting 6 points here. Looking at Cam Newton, he's a real talent, physical specimen at the quarterback position. Never really learned how to be an NFL quarterback, though. Got a Wonderlic score the size of my shoe. We're talking, 10 and a half, maybe tops. Not real good at decision making. So that Buffalo defense gave Tom Brady fits last week. Might not work out for Cam Newton this week. Okay. You move on to Ray Rice. Ray kind of struggled out there against Denver. Of course, they were down by 600 points after half. So, they weren't going to run the football a whole lot. I think things change a little bit against Cleveland. Cleveland, not going to jump out to a big lead, keeps Ray Rice in the ball game, lets him run a little bit. CJ Spiller, everybody thought big things were in store for him on the first week. Not so much against New England. Got a chance to redeem himself against Carolina. It's kind of a neutral matchup, but I really like Spiller and what he brings to the table. Steve Smith, he's 87, still gets in and out of his cuts pretty well, still got some deep speed. See if Cam can't get him the ball. He might turn in a good day. He might not. Who knows? Pierre Garçon, my problem right now is RG3 doesn't look healthy. He doesn't look ready to play NFL football right now. So I think Pierre Garçon, he might be in for a score, maybe about 40 to 50 yards receiving, but don't expect a monster game from Garçon. Phil Dawson, he's been around since Moses. I mean, you look at the guy's picture, you wonder how the hell he's still in the NFL. San Francisco at Seattle, again, I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. He probably gets a couple of field goal opportunities, so not a bad play at the kicker position. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, that should be a real dogfight too. Roethlisberger's kind of banged up. That offense is way out of sync. I think this is a good week to start the Bengals at defense, and I think they're going to do some good things. Tony Gonzalez, the ageless wonder in Atlanta at tight end. I told you I don't like a whole lot of tight ends in this league, but he's got an opportunity to catch a touchdown pass this week, so not a bad play there. Switching over to Stars' side of the fence, this guy's my boss, so I got to be pretty nice about his team. Eli had that monster game last week. I think, again, it's going to be a shootout against his older brother. He's going to want to play well to prove that he's not the other Manning. I think we can expect some big things from Eli. LaShawn McCoy just came out gangbusters on Monday night. My prediction is he finishes second to Adrian Peterson this year in running back points, fantasy-wise. So I think LaShawn McCoy has a huge day against San Diego. Foster and Tate ran for 112 yards against that Charger defense. I think McCoy can top that. Jamal Charles, little dinged up. Don't know what's going to go on there. Kansas City, Dallas. That Dallas defense is better than what Kansas City faced last week in Jacksonville. So I don't know if he's going to have the same game. We hope that he's healthy and he can take the field, but I just don't think his production is going to be there against that Cowboy defense. Victor Cruz is the best talent on the field in New York, and Eli's looking for him all the time. So expect big things from Cruz. Could be another multiple touchdown game against Denver. Frank Gore's kind of the sleeper in this lineup this week. I think against the Seahawks, big physical secondary. I don't think Kaepernick's going to try and throw a whole lot on that secondary. I think they're going to try to run the football. I think they're going to run it with Frank Gore. I think he's going to get a lot of touches, a lot of yards, might punch it in for a couple short scores. So watch out for Frank Gore to kind of have the difference-making game in San Francisco. Bullock and the Texans D taking on Tennessee. Kind of hard to go wrong there. I don't think the Tennessee Titans are going to pose much of a threat for the Houston defense. Jake Locker still wet behind the ears. still learn the ropes as an NFL quarterback. I think the Texans defense is going to make his life a little bit miserable this week. Lastly, you got James Jones, pulled the greatest disappearing act ever out in San Francisco with 2 targets last week. I think he needs to step up against a porous Washington defense and really present Aaron Rodgers with another target other than Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. So all that being said, I like Starr here. I think the 6-point spread's probably pretty good. I think he actually covers that, though. So Starr to cover in that game. Moving on down the line here. Let's go to Mama's Boys at Scoresman, okay? We were just talking about Colin Kaepernick. I like Colin Kaepernick, mobile quarterback, big arm, street savvy. He's got his tattoos. I like him. He's hard. He's from the street. Reminds me of myself when I was a youngster, before I got all this going on. I had a troubled past myself, but enough about that. We're going to get back to the game. Colin Kaepernick is going to do well this week. I don't know that he throws a bunch of touchdowns, but he might scramble in for 1 or 2. Hard to put him on the bench. He's a great talent. Doug Martin, I think that Tampa team is in disarray. I think the offense in particular is in disarray. They couldn't run the ball last week against the Jets. That New Orleans defense looked pretty good against a tough Falcons offense last week. So temper your expectations about Doug Martin this week. I think he's going to struggle. DeMarco Murray, I think this is the week where you really see him shine. That Kansas City defense looked good, but they looked good against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, I think I could put together a band of my buddies, and we'd look pretty good against the Jacksonville Jaguars too. So expect good things from DeMarco Murray this week. I think he gets in the end zone, and I think he's actually a factor in the passing game too. Randall Cobb, as I talked about, he's one of Rodgers' favorite targets. He's always going to be involved in the passing game, and I think he's got an opportunity to score as well this week. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Dez Bryant. Last week kind of went down with the foot injury. Not really sure what's going on with his health. New York had a great game plan to just take him away and make Miles Austin and Jason Witten beat them. Unfortunately, they did that. But I don't know if Kansas City is going to employ the same game plan to take Dez away. So I think you got to play Dez, and you got to hope that he's more than just a decoy this week. David Wilson, this is a tough start because I'm not even sure the kid's going to see the field. He puts it on the ground. He's not trustworthy. You just don't know what you're going to get. He can't pick up blitzers, so you can't leave him in there in third down situations where he's got to stay in and pass block. So David Wilson is just a real issue in your lineup this week. So I'm not a real fan of that play. Garrett Hartley, plays on one of the most prolific offenses in the National Football League. They score a ton of points. Nothing's going to change about that this week. They're going to go down to Tampa. They're going to score a ton of points, and he's going to be in line for a big day. Broncos D, not a bad play. Eli's not exactly accurate with the football all the time. I think they got a chance for a couple picks, maybe a pick 6 in there somewhere. Definitely some sacks. That giant offensive line had some difficulties against Dallas, so a good play there with the Broncos defense. We move it on over now, and we go over to Scoresman's side of the fence. Matt Ryan, everybody knew coming in this year he was going to have another big year, another year with Julio Jones and Roddy White, and Tony Gonzalez came back. Now he's got a new toy in Steven Jackson. Expected big things from him. We didn't really get that against New Orleans. This week we're going against St. Louis. I said their secondary is a little bit better than everybody thinks, but I still think he has a decent game. So you got to go with Matt Ryan here and just hope he turns in 2 to 3 touchdowns, and your 250 yards passing should be good. Alfred Morris, I was really high on him coming into the season, and it was just a little disappointing. I think that was partly due to, RG3's rust. The whole offense looked rusty, so they just hadn't played together yet. That Green Bay defensive line did a fantastic job against Frank Gore last week. I think Gore averaged 2 yards a carry. It could be tough sledding for Alfred Morris this week, so just keep that in mind. CJ2K, off to a pretty decent start, playing Pittsburgh in the first week of the season. Here against Houston, San Diego actually ran the ball okay. I think their game plan is going to go through Chris Johnson, so he's going to get his chances to run. He's going to get his chances to get in the end zone. I just don't see it being like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. So think more along the lines of 80 yards and maybe 1 score. So that's what we're looking at with Chris Johnson. Deshaun Jackson, had a great game. He is custom made for Chip Kelly's offense. Get to the line quick, start wearing out those DBs, the play action pass deep down the field. He's going to be the recipient of that all year long. I love what he brings to the table, and I think he's going to do really well against San Diego this week. Eric Decker was kind of the forgotten man in Denver. You got Demaryius Thomas catching touchdowns and Wes Welker catching touchdowns and Julius, the new tight end, catching touchdowns. And Eric Decker was kind of left out of the mix. We know Peyton Manning. We know he likes to spread the ball around. You got to leave Eric Decker in your lineup. He's going to come through for you. Jordan Cameron, it's another one of these flash-in-the-pan tight ends. Everybody's excited about him. And the only reason is because Brandon Whedon's got nobody else to throw to right now. When Josh Gordon comes back, Jordan Cameron is out of the equation. Might be a good fill-in this week. Baltimore's still a good defense. I don't look for him to do too much. Blair Walsh, great kicker. One of those NFC North matchups. I think he's going to do well because Chicago's got a good defense. I see Minnesota stalling in the red zone a lot, so I think Blair Walsh is going to get a couple opportunities to score. Moving on to the Patriots defense, we know the Jets are atrocious. Even with Geno Smith at quarterback, the Bucs gave them that game last week. Geno Smith didn't go out there and win it. So I think the hoodie is going to have some tricks up his sleeve. He's going to give the young quarterback some fits on Thursday night. So I expect the Patriots D to be a real nice play on Thursday. All this being said, it's a close game, and the line predicts it. With 1 point separating them. I've got scores, man, just to cover that though. I think it's going to be less than 5 points, and I think Matt Ryan probably makes a little bit of the difference. Deshaun Jackson probably catches a deep one, and I think Eric Decker shows up as one of Peyton Manning's targets this week. So look for scoresmen to cover in that one. We're going to move on from that, and we're going to go down here to Hooligan at the Outlaw. Now, the first thing I got to know is, what's a team that scored 76 points last week being pegged to score 40 this week? It just makes no sense to me. Well, I know Outlaw's got some tough matchups, and we'll get to him in a second, but I want to start with the Hooligan, rather. I'm sorry. Drew Brees, going into Tampa Bay, there was all this talk about, Revis Island, and they got Golston from San Francisco. They bolstered the secondary. All that's not going to matter. Drew Brees is Drew Brees. He's going to go into Tampa. He's going to light up the scoreboard. Everybody's going to catch touchdowns. It's just going to be one of those deals. So I like Drew Brees to have a really big day. Steven Jackson, this is a grudge game if you ever seen one. He's going up against his old team in St. Louis. He's got something to prove. He's going to bring his A game to the table. I think you ought to expect big things out of Steven Jackson, at least one touchdown, maybe 100 yards rushing if they commit to it. So Steven Jackson's a nice play this week. You got Darrell Richardson on the other side of the ball going against Atlanta. Atlanta's strength is their secondary. So don't look for Bradford to do all the damage. Look for Darrell Richardson to do some of the damage because they're going to try to run the football, control the clock, keep Matt Ryan off the field. So those type of things are going to happen. St. Louis and Atlanta. So look for Darrell Richardson to have a decent day. Vincent Jackson, he is right now the only weapon that the Bucs have. 150 yards receiving last week. He's going to draw some coverage from New Orleans. There's no doubt about it. But you still got to leave him in your lineup because he is the definition of a number one in Tampa. Demaryius Thomas, again, a big-time target. The only thing I have to say about Demaryius Thomas is look at what the Giants did to Dez Bryant last week. They completely took him out of the game, made the other receivers beat them. If they try to employ the same strategy against Denver, Demaryius Thomas is the guy that they will take out of the game plan, and they'll make Welker and those other guys beat them. So watch for Demaryius Thomas. He may disappear based on the Giants' game plan. Moving on to Marquise Colston, I think he's going to have a lot of success. I don't know if Revis is going to line up on him. I don't know if it's going to matter. The Bucs are atrocious. Brees is going to spread it around. He's eventually going to get lined up in a matchup that's suitable for him to score, and I think he'll do so. David Akers, kicking for Detroit now at Arizona. Should have some opportunities. Arizona's defense is okay, but again, should get some red zone looks there for Akers. And then the Packers against Washington, I tell you, see those linebackers get after the quarterback. They can stuff the middle with all those big bodies. I think they're going to make it tough for RG3 to be mobile in this game, and I think they're going to get to him a couple times. So I like the Packers D in that one. Let's switch it over. We're going over to the other side of the fence with Outlaw. Tony Romo, as everybody saw, a little dinged up last week tough to get around. I think he's going to be okay. And the Kansas City secondary really wasn't tested last week by Blaine Gabbert. So I think this week they really get a test in Tony Romo. I think Romo plays pretty well there. Adrian Peterson, I mean, what can you say? The first time he touches the ball, he rambles for 78 yards and 6 points. The guy is flat out the best player in the NFL. I don't care who he's playing. People say, "Oh, the Chicago defense is good." Well, Adrian Peterson's good. So just expect good things from him. Reggie Bush, we touched on before. He's a little dinged up. We're hoping that he's going to be okay. I know Arizona's not hoping that he's going to be okay because he can create some real problems for you out of the backfield, catching the ball, running the ball, draws, screens, you name it. I expect him to have a big day because, if you try to focus on stopping Megatron, Reggie's going to be there to provide the 1-2 punch. A.J. Green, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh really didn't look all that good. I mean, Tennessee with Locker at the helm hung 16 points on him. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the most Jake Locker scored in 2 full NFL seasons. So I think, A.J. Green's got a chance to do some real damage against a Pittsburgh defense that's not what it used to be. A.J. Green, of course, you got to put him in your lineup. Brandon Marshall, same deal as Demaryius Thomas. I think Minnesota tried to take Megatron out of that game. You didn't see big stats from Megatron. They might try to do the same thing to Brandon Marshall and take him out of the game. So temper your expectations for Brandon Marshall against the Vikings. Miles Austin was the recipient of all those looks when Des Bryant disappeared last week. If he can stay healthy, obviously Tony Romo likes to look for him. So this could be a good thing for Miles Austin in Kansas City this week. I think Dan Bailey kicks a ton of extra points, a couple field goals against Kansas City. And then the Seahawks defense, kind of a curious play. San Francisco, Kaepernick, kind of a tough offense to really generate turnovers from, tough offense to generate sacks from because he is so mobile. So, but the Seahawks have one of the best secondaries in the NFL. You can't sit them. You just got to understand that this might be one of those games where they just don't score a heck of a lot of points. You add all this up. I know Outlaw played great last week, put up a ton of points, but from a matchup standpoint, I just think Hooligan's got the better matchups this week. I'm taking Hooligan to win and cover. And then lastly, my game of the week this week is Shark and Fuff. Last week Fuff played great. Hooligan was just a little bit better. I've got Hooligan as one of my 2 strongest teams in this league, with Outlaw being the other one on a consistent basis. We're talking week in and week out. Shark, Shark had a fine run last week. He took it to Scoresman. And so this week it's 2 teams that I think can really bring it to the table. And this is going to be a heck of a game. The line has got Pick'em, and I think it's dead on. Let's get right to the matchups. Tom Brady, New England against the Jets. Like I said before in the episode here, the Jets have a defense that's stouter than everybody thinks. They're going to be tough. They're going to bring it. Tom's down on weapons a little bit. You got Edelman stepping in. Amendola went down. Gronk's still not back. So you got to look at this and think, it's the Jets, but it's really their offense that sucks, not their defense. So, temper your expectations for Brady and his production. Matt Forte is the guy that I'm really excited about this week. I saw what Reggie Bush did to the Minnesota Vikings last week as a dual threat running back coming out of the backfield, catching passes, running draws, and so forth. Matt Forte is that same kind of running back. So expect him to do good things against the Vikings this week. Arian Foster looked a little disgruntled on the sidelines, with San Diego, splitting time with Ben Tate. I think they try to get him involved in the offense a little bit more, getting more carries, maybe more of a 70-30 split this week with Tate. So look for him to do some good things against Tennessee. You got Larry Fitzgerald facing off against Detroit. I think he should do some good things. We actually saw Minnesota move the football. Of course, a lot of that was with Adrian Peterson, but now Fitzgerald's got Palmer throwing to him. I think they're going to be fine. They're going to be moving the football against Detroit. I think he has a decent game. Jordy Nelson obviously made some phenomenal plays in that San Francisco game last week. I think he's the de facto number 1 in Green Bay. Everybody says, it's James Jones, it's Randall Cobb. No, I think it's Jordy Nelson. And Jordy Nelson is going to show up this week against Washington. I think he's going to do a phenomenal job, have a chance to score probably over 100 yards receiving. Maurice Jones-Drew Jacksonville at Oakland. This might be the only game that Jacksonville has a chance to win all year because Oakland's in disarray as well. I like Maurice Jones-Drew to put up some pretty good numbers against Oakland. Greg Zuerlein, Greg the Leg, you got to start him. The guy can kick it from his own 20-yard line. Anytime you get a kicker like that, you got to start the guy. I think against Atlanta, he gets a couple opportunities. The thing you got to be aware of is if Atlanta gets ahead, St. Louis isn't going to be kicking field goals. They're going to be driving for touchdowns to try to play catch-up. So that's kind of one of those things you got to watch for. The Bears, at Minnesota or against Minnesota, it's all about Adrian Peterson. They run the ball so much. They're not going to give you an opportunity to sack the quarterback and intercept passes. So it's tough to start the Bears this week and expect a lot from them. They're a great defense. You got to play them. I understand that. You got to start them. You just got to be realistic about how much they're actually going to get you. Okay, let's switch it over. We're going to get over to Fuff's side. Matthew Stafford, a disappointing week 1 against Minnesota. I look for him to kind of bounce back. Arizona's got some good players in the secondary. But Sam Bradford had a pretty successful week. I mean, almost 300 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, Matt Stafford is in a different class than Sam Bradford, so look for him to get on track. I think he gets his chemistry going with Megatron, and I think they're going to do good things at Arizona. Marshawn Lynch, I think, is the way that Seattle is going to attack San Francisco. I think they saw Lacey have some success last week against San Francisco. I think they're going to go to Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch was a disappointment in week 1. I think he gets on track against San Francisco. Moving on down to Darren McFadden. Not real impressed with what Darren McFadden's done recently. He can't stay healthy, can't stay on the field. But Jacksonville, I look at what Jamal Charles did when he was in the game, 16 carries, 77 yards. Look for Darren McFadden to have that kind of success against the Jaguars. We already talked about Megatron. I think he's going to do great things against Arizona. Reggie Wayne going against the Dolphins. The Dolphins are a young defense. Reggie Wayne is a crafty veteran. He's got a quarterback that likes to look for him. So look for Reggie Wayne to have a pretty good game against Miami. Julian Edelman seems to be the hot waiver wire pickup this week for anybody that lost Danny Amendola. He's going to step in and provide Tom Brady with a nice target. Had a nice week 1. So I think we're going to see Julian Edelman get the lion's share of the looks from Tom Brady. So although he'll probably see Cromartie on him, maybe a couple other good corners mixed in there, they're going to roll some coverage his way. I still think Julian Edelman gets enough looks to make it worthwhile starting him this week. Steven Gostkowski, when you got an offense like the Patriots, you got to have a kicker like that. Gets in the red zone a bunch, can put up a bunch of field goals. He'll be a fine play this week. And then, the Bucs playing New Orleans. I've talked about this matchup already. I think New Orleans just burns the scoreboard to the ground this weekend against the Bucs. It's just not going to go well for them. So, they're projected to score 3 points. I think they'll be lucky if they put up 3 points. So, but I understand if you picked them as your starting defense, you expected some good things, revamped secondary, a maturing linebacking core, a maturing defensive line. You expect things to get better for them, but this week might be a struggle for them. So, all those things said, this is a really tough game to pick, but I am actually going to go with Shark here because I think Fuff's got a couple too many matchup problems going on there, but it's going to be a real close game. I think Matt Forte has a huge game, and that's the difference in this one, okay? So, Mel Kiper Jr., Star Kiper, Vegas, whatever the hell you want to call it, screw the 4-letter network, and I will see y'all next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.